All of these videos have been building up to this skill set that will make you the one-eyed king in the land of the blind once this money collapse, this corporate collapse, this AI collapse happens. You will be okay. So, the skill that I'm talking about is the alpha operator system skill set. It's a processing system. Basically, it's based on a Boolean logic concept. And so, I want to really get into what the processing system looks like that you need to develop so that you will bypass all of this structural issues that are happening right now, that you will be able to succeed in this world. You will be able to be a leader in this world. You will be financially stable. You will be at the top of the ladder in the world that is being set up right now for everyone. Because of the entire gentle parenting disaster that I talked about in the last video, we have a bunch of users. Also, notice that the digital infrastructure that we're dealing with is user friendly now. I did talk about the user and operator several videos back. So now we're going to get more into the user versus the operator. As you can tell, Gen Z has now eliminated any bit of operator that they ever had in them because of the bad parenting, the bad systems that they're in, and the perfect functioning looking, the user friendliness, I guess. They're not perfect, they mess up a lot of the technology that they're dealing with. They've never had to go into a machine and fix it. They press a button and it works. So if the button doesn't work, what happens next? They don't know because they've never had to experience that. Because there's always someone who will be able to fix it for them, and they have been doing that. So that is where we're at. The operators, the people who know how things function, who can fix it, and the users, the Gen Z users who were taught only to be users. They have no functioning in them. They have no operator in them. And this generational divide is the biggest issue. It's the crux of our competency crisis that we're in. This is why we got here. It's because we are not teaching our children, we're not developing Boolean logic. The operators have Boolean logic. The millennials had to develop their Boolean logic. They had to develop the if then ideas. They had to understand that when this happens, something is affected. There are actions and there are consequences. That is how the entire world works. That is how sowing and reaping works when you're in an agricultural field. That is how money works. That's how investments work. That is literally how the world works. There is cause, there is an effect. You press a button on a phone, something happens. There's an effect of it. That connection is completely lost. There were no boundaries, there were no structures, there was nothing that was teaching anyone how to navigate anything, to understand any cause or effect. This is why when you walk down a street and a Gen Z sees a wall, they're not looking at the past saying, oh, well, that's clearly a structural wall that's keeping up the building and I should turn and walk on the path. They just keep running into the wall and they don't know why. If you don't have Boolean logic, you are living in an animal world. Now, having higher level thinking, having the emotional capacity to speak and the vocabulary to tell all of these emotions, you can imagine how volatile of a mental system that is when you have no actual functioning power, mechanical power, but you're having all these thoughts, emotions that are still there. You're actually living a more animalistic lifestyle. So Boolean logic is the strict if-then logic. It's structured. It's the understanding that every single action has an actual reaction, a consequence. And you cannot avoid a consequence. You can adjust to make different actions happen, different effects, but something has a cause and there is an effect. That is just how things work. My brain says I want to lift my hand and touch my temple. I do it. There's a cause, and then the effect is that it happens. And it's happening. My hand lifts up and it touches. Like, there is stuff happening, but that is a cause and effect. That is the Boolean logic. It is super simple to understand. It feels eerily simple. It's why we forgot to teach our kids it. The if-then syntax of reality is what we have to understand. We have to live by it. It's how we function. And it's how we are successful. It's how we beat friction. It's how we beat resistance. It's how the physical world is meant to be. And it's also how the computerized digital world is meant to be. They're built by zeros and ones, by if-then Boolean logic. The initial infrastructure, how you see a pixel on a screen, those are trained in that this chain and this 0 and 1, this chain of numbers, this syntax code equals this exact pixel in this exact area. You actually have to code the code before you code the code. And then you code the code. Like there's several layers of codes that have been developed just so AI could start coding. This is what I'm talking about. The people who built the codes just to make something look on a screen, those are the one-eyed kings. You guys, these are the skills, the people who understand the codes of the codes of the codes and adjust it and make their game do what they want. These are the operators. Do not be a user. Be an alpha tech operator. Change the way you think. Use Boolean logic and you will start being successful. It's super easy to switch your mindset. If you haven't already been doing this and living your life like the operators have been born into, you can easily switch up your mindset and become this operator and grow this Boolean logic skill. It's the alpha tech generation that were raised with it, but you can teach it, and we have to teach it now. I'm not suggesting we create unuser-friendly things. I like user-friendly stuff, but then we have to create the resistance and friction somewhere else. We have to treat and grow the brain so that they can process in the way that the world is processing things. Because if they never understand how the world works, just in life, natural physics, they're never going to survive on their own. They're never going to be true leaders, pure leaders who can survive in a crisis. Because we need leaders who don't just run an app, they understand the system. There is a difference between running a system and running an app. An app, a user opens it. It's working. It works within the system. It's directly connected to things, or it's isolated on its own. You can do what it needs to do. You can export it to something else. You may have to have multiple apps because they aren't connected. The system that they're connected to, the thing that connects them is the system, not the app itself. And a user basically just runs apps. The system's there, they just run a bunch of apps. The apps do not have to play friendly together. They may need 5 apps to do one thing, or they may transfer from this app and go to here, and they're not apps that play well together. They're much different codes. Some, they'll use this code, and another one, you can look at gaming, and you look at, whether you're doing a 64-bit, and none of the older games will work. If I use Premiere Pro, if I use my audio editing or my video editing software, I have to use the right one. I have to use Premiere Pro 2025. I cannot use an older project, a 2021 project it has to be converted to 2025. These apps are not the system. Those are users. That's how a user looks at life. Apps through a separate code, a code that this code and this code together would completely crash that app. It's built in this world in an app, separate. So it has boundaries. It has these boundaries around it protecting that app, and it's coding in there. So you can run a bunch of different apps that don't even connect to each other, have nothing to do with it, don't even know each other exist, and don't have to exist within each other. There are things that I have to turn off in order to be able to run another app. There are drivers I have to turn off to be able to run this specific game. Some apps cannot work together. A system, that is how an operator works. That is how they process. They are a system. They are the thing that everything has to function within the system. If an app is made on the phone, but it's not made for that iOS, then that app won't download. It won't update. It won't function. So the phone, the system says, you need to update that app. So then you go and you update the app. Now the app can function within the system. The system will not run bad code. I mean, if it does, it gets a virus. Viruses are kind of old school things, but you know what I mean, the concept. So a system cannot have code that doesn't work well together. If it does have codes that interact poorly together, they're bounded by apps. They're protected inside a system, but they all have to work with the system, and the system has to make sense. There can never be a point or any piece of that system that doesn't work. Ever look at a TV screen and there's one little dot there? It's because part of the system's broken. Every bit of that has to work. Every pixel has to be functioning. If one pixel is broken, you're not going to be able to see that little that color in that box and it's going to be really annoying on your screen. That is how it works. Just like you can't take a 720, make it a 1080, and expect it to be as high quality or clear. It's going to be blurry because there's less pixels. It can't create the pixels. The concept of the operator is you're the phone system, you're the computer system. A user is the app. So a user could actually run 5 apps and there's no system connecting anything together. They just take the app that functions for that moment. It's an efficiency user. It's an efficiency lifestyle. What you think today, your ideology today does not have to match what you say tomorrow. That's the difference between a user and an operator. An operator, they may say something contradictory, but you pointed out they're going to fix their code. They have to fix the code in their head so everything just flows. It would break the machine. Users do not have to worry about that. Operators, that's how they run. Operators need the system to be clean. They need all the code to fix. They cannot run a bad code. They will break. Because to an operator, the system's integrity is the only thing that matters. Not that that app works, not that that game works, that the system does not crash, that generally everything can function. It's why you sometimes have to compromise something in your system so that you can do something else. These are the way that the operators think. Users don't think that way. Operators run apps on top of a system and everything has to function together. Users don't even know what the system is. They're just running random apps and their computer may well crash in any second because none of their codes match. They don't care. They're just flying by with their new app every day, their new ideology every day. They're not making sure anything is consistent. It's just, this is a situation. I need this app for this. This is my code for this. And this works for this moment. It works for my life, what I need right at this moment. And I'm going to say it at this moment. And it doesn't matter. I'm not even going to remember it tomorrow because tomorrow it's going to be a different situation and a different app will be used. And that is how a user works versus an operator. They don't care if every single mindset, every single ideology, every single thought, every single step, they don't need all of that to make structural sense. They don't care. They don't even think about the structure. They care about that they get what they want at that exact moment. Operators tend to be less emotional. They understand that if you try to run a messy emotional script, it's going to mess with the systemic coding. Your mechanics are not going to be your CPU's in overdrive. Like, you can't run your emotional code over there. So yes, you feel the emotional code, your CPU's rising, and you got to cool off the system. These are how operators are working. This is how I'm working in my brain often. The word no to us is essential. The boundaries are essential. They keep the computer from crashing. You tell yourself no. You tell yourself to stop. You get yourself to work. You got to do the things you do. That's how the system doesn't crash. That's how an operator thinks. So when you look at Gen Z, we're not just talking about users who never heard the word no. We're talking about users who were brought up in the highest level of privilege, the highest level of digital infrastructure and functioning, the highest equality level of technological access that we've ever had in entire history of the world. They had entered the absolute highest quality of life per capita in entire world history. Wrap your brain around that. Also wrap your brain around that that was actually the case in the near past, in the very close distant past. That was how it was. If you look at the United States specifically between 2010 and 2016, there is an unprecedented comfort on average throughout the United States compared to any other time in history. You didn't have to wait for anything. You had delivery at your door. The 2 days turned into overnights. You didn't have to wait for internet to dial up. You didn't even have to watch a TV schedule. You could just choose your streaming app and watch anything you wanted somehow. You didn't have to build anything. You didn't have to wait for anything. You didn't have to struggle to survive. You were in this digital utopia, while at the same time your parents really didn't give you any moment or freedom to yourself in the world, and you never learned any if-then consequence logic. Cause and effect means nothing to you. And you combine a frictionless world with no if-then Boolean logic, you get this catastrophic result that we're seeing in the world. You don't build a better human, you build a weaker human. I know elite people know this. I believe that's part of a big plan, among other plans. I like conspiracy theories. It doesn't change the fact that it's happening, regardless of if it's intentional or not. Because they never had to face consequences, Gen Z never developed those neural pathways for critical thought, for learning from mistakes, for being a good loser. You know, you have to learn how to be a good winner and a good loser. They never learned how to do either. There was never even an option to fail, so you can't be a good winner if no one's technically a loser, or if everyone's a loser except for you, and that's just by default. I don't know. It's very complicated. I don't live in that world, but it sounds messy. But honestly, this isn't just an opinion. We have officially created the first generation in the history that is supposedly scientifically less intelligent than the previous. There is scientific research that's saying that people born in the 80s are the peak of the intelligence, and since then it's gone down. That's not how it was for every other generation. It's not how it's supposed to be. It's not how it needs to be. So neuroscientists are looking at all of this data, and they are realizing that the over reliance on technology, the oversimplification, the user friendliness of the screens, and our weird need for efficiency that's automated regardless than actual just efficiency. We want automated efficiency that is actually less efficient, but it's automated and we call it efficiency. Make that make sense. And this is really the grounding foundation of the competency crisis we are in right now. The millennials completely dismantled the if then, cause and effect, actions have consequences structure of reality of the world, of every system that we have, including their own parenting. And in effect, they removed their children's and their children's ability to reason, to have logic, to understand cause and effect, the basic way that the world runs. You plant a seed, it grows. Cause and effect. You water the seed, it grows. You don't water the seed, it dies. They don't learn those things anymore. And we think, oh, it's just they'll figure it out. They haven't. Wake up. Look at the science, look at the data. Look at the world. Look at your children. This is a failure. That absolute void of logic and resistance was the breeding ground needed to create a generation of irrational, emotionally driven, less intelligent, codependent, highly sensitive, inflexible, and wildly entitled users. And what happens when this group of users are forced to face reality that doesn't care about their feelings or their own personal goal or agenda? What happens then is what we really need to outline next. Like that's our next topic. But before you sign off, I want to take a quick second and acknowledge that millennials, I don't believe, did this all on purpose. I say stuff about elites, I say stuff about conspiracies, but I do not believe this was intentionally to ruin their children or ruin the world. They did not set out to strip their children of logical reasoning. I don't think they sat in a room and plotted to destroy Gen Z on purpose. I think there were elites that were plotting to destroy everything on purpose, but I don't think, like, as a whole, that's what millennials were doing. But the reality is actually much sadder. They just lacked their own logical reasoning from that mid-range millennial that didn't have to deal with the earlier friction, the operator mindset, that they didn't even think. They didn't reason that that was something that could be lost, that you had to actually teach. Because we were raised so naturally to use these, especially with digital, when you're working with a computer, you learn if then logic pretty quickly. Those were things that just happened. They were created in your brain. How you process the world was with cause and effect, with open and closed chambers. That's how you understood machines. Every machine worked that way. You understood from computers to even a washing machine, there were open and closed triggers. From electricity, there's open and closed. Everything in science, when you're looking at the conduction, is opening and closing. There's cause and effects, triggers that open and close, if and then logic. It's all the same concept of the logic. Of something happens, there's an effect of that thing that happens, and then something else happens, you can turn down that effect of the thing that happens. Even millennials, they understood that you needed to upgrade your operating system, that if you wanted your PC Windows 98 to work, you had to upgrade and get the CD-ROM and put Windows 98 in. They also lived in a choose a Mac or choose a PC world where you knew that whatever you chose, the system was not compatible. Of course, I'm very grateful that it's changed, but there was a time, if you remember, where they did not play nice together. Androids and iPhones, Google was not on the iPhone. These were things that actually existed in the past. The natural friction that it took, oh, I'm going to do all of my audio and all of my editing on Adobe Audition because Adobe Audition is on a PC. I need all of my stuff on PC, but my video editing works better on my Mac. And so I guess I'm going to have to use the driver on my Mac, and then I'm going to have to convert and do, like, that's where HandBrake came in. VLC, if you know HandBrake or VLC, you're an operator by design. We had to function in the world. We wanted to use the digital stuff, and we had to manipulate everything. It wasn't in a user-friendly package. And even just the difference between the PC and Mac world just 15 years ago shows you that major logical thing that was being ingrained just naturally, even in millennials. So, of course, you weren't thinking, oh, we're going to lose that. You just didn't think about it. I didn't think about it. I didn't think about it until I was thinking about this whole concept. None of us realized that handing our children a perfectly smooth operating system where everything kind of works together, where your phone seamlessly, you can do a handoff to your HomePod or your TV or whatever, to from your headphones to your speaker to this. No one realized that in sounding really cool, making it really convenient, making things efficient, that it was actually eliminating important processing, learning system that now we have to recreate somewhere else for our children. In creating this completely user-friendly, front-facing interface, we robbed our children of the struggle they needed to experience in order to think. To build a muscle, you need resistance. You will move your muscle over and over and over to build, and muscle building and muscle builders, people who actually are fitness people know this better than me, but I learned that I actually have to do all the reps. My muscle has to be tired. Once my muscle's tired and it feels like it can't go, when I feel the resistance, that's when I'm building the muscle. Up until then, if I go and then I feel resistance, I say, oh, it's ready. No, I had no growth in that moment. I maybe maintained, I maybe ripped a few of the muscles, tore some that they can rebuild a little, but I did not actually experience any growth if I did not let myself experience that pain and that resistance. So when you work out, you've got to hit the bad point where you're like, oh, this is hard. That's when you're actually growing. That's when your stamina's growing. That's when everything's growing. That's why you have to go a little further each time. That's how it works. And in that, you have to use your brain. Your brain is a muscle, and it has to be used the same way. Logic is a muscle. It has to be used in the same way. If you're always using lip gloss or lip balm, your lips will stop producing moisture on its own. If you only use glasses or contacts and never use your real eyes, your eyesight's going to get worse and worse because your muscles are atrophying. If your muscle is not used, it atrophies. If your logic muscle is never even built, especially if it's not built, but if it's not even used, it will atrophy. Your brain is atrophying when you're not using it. We need friction to grow our brain. Friction means things need to be hard. Things need to be uncomfortable. We need to think. Sometimes we need to be wrong. We need to make mistakes. We need to try. We need to make effort, and we need to learn, and we need to practice, and we need to grow. And that's the only way to grow. So Gen Z, Gen Alpha, Gen Beta, they don't even have physical architecture. The structure is not even built in their brains anymore. And our educational system has ripped that away from them as well, because at least we used to have some sort of system that did make them work or think, and now it's just participation trophies everywhere. There is no friction or resistance for growth. There are no growth in our youth anymore, in our brains, not even our own brains. This is a problem with adults as well. Our brains will atrophy as well. We have to use our logic. We have to have the friction. We have to work. We have to learn. Hard work is necessary for us to be smarter, to be better. I don't even want to get into when millennials decided that introducing AI to their children without any rules was a good idea. They were the ones who heralded it in with everything that they did. They advanced AI at breakneck speed. They wanted the efficiency. They wanted the automation. They wanted the frictionless life. And they just rushed blindly into the digital deep end. So once again, Gen Z, Gen Alpha became unconsenting beta testers. And instead of just social media and the predators, these human issues, now they're being exposed as young children to raw, chaotic, unhinged, extremely volatile, uncharted, untested AI world. AI is being developed as an incredibly manipulative, human mimicking, dangerous entity. And it's creating a mindset, a user mindset that is the lowest stage of user, the most atrophied type of mental capacity that a human could have as an adult to be able to function in the world. That is the mindset that AI is creating. This master manipulator propagates whatever data is fed into it, and you have no control over what it tells you, if it's true or not, and it won't even tell you if it's true or not. It will lie to your face, it'll gaslight you, it'll psychologically mess with your head. I have a whole AI empathy crash video about it. The marketers, the creators, they cloak this extremely detrimental technology, this damaging technology, inside this pretty, user-friendly, magical, this just happens kind of environment, this ecosystem. That's what it looks like. If you're a first stage user, that's what your experience is. And because it was wrapped in this attractive interface, it completely masked the danger, and it continues to mask the dangers. So now you have Gen Z just prancing around, randomly roaming the internet, these unwilling, unprotected targets of the algorithm. They have no armor, they have no mental capacity. They have no mechanical grit. They were thrown into a psychological bioweapon called an algorithm, and their parents did absolutely nothing to protect them. Their parents were the ones who built it. So no, I don't think millennials realize what they're doing, but I also do not think they really care. Remember, look at the old videos. This is a self-indulgent, self-centered generation. You have to look at the reality of who millennials were at the time of their growing up, who they turned into, because we were, and I'm including myself here, the first generation to fully be able to indulge in ourselves. This was a generation when self-help, this is blown up. It's all over there. It's all about me. It's all about myself. It's all about self. Self-centeredness, self-focus. Everything is about internal, how I feel. There is nothing about community. It's all about individual identity and me, me, me. And so millennials, we're having these kids, we're building this tech, but we're also the most selfish generation at that point to date. What do you expect to happen to our kids? What do you expect for the technology that we're building to turn into? We were so hyper-focused on our own therapy speak, talking about our own trauma over and over in our own victimhood so we can stand on a pedestal instead of ever actually fixing it. We were so hyper focused on our own emotional validation. We were so hyper focused on our own fame, on our own online clout, that we just handed screens to our kids. This dangerous algorithm to our tiny developing children's brains. And of course, this spawned Gen Z, Gen Alpha, Gen Beta now that are even more selfish. You don't breed selflessness from selfishness. Of course, the next generations after us are far more self-indulgent, far more self-destructive, far more self-centered, but that's how things evolve. Things don't naturally become better over time. They rot, they become chaotic, they are destroyed. And this is how rot, this is how mold, this is how rust, it evolves, it grows. It is a pattern, it is bad habits, it is passed down, and there is lack of accountability or responsibility taught or learned or passed on. Because we were too lazy and selfish to teach our kids the word no, because we were too traumatized to deal with it and understand that, yeah, we didn't like all that structure, but maybe we can have healthy structure, because we just decided to remove every bit of structure for no reason, with no scientific evidence supporting any of our choices that we made. We bred a generation that believes that the entire world should cater directly to their individual personal feelings of the moment, every moment. They failed to teach the logic. They advanced the AI without any guardrails. They completely abandoned any structure or safety. And so now we, the alpha tech operators, the people who are still trying to use our mental muscle somehow in this world, we're going to have to come in and fix everything. We're going to have to come in and clean up the wreckage. I know I've been really easy on Gen Z, and trust me, this has been easy on Gen Z, but now I really want to spend the next video talking about who Gen Z is, because I've talked about why they were created, what they were built into. So now I need to talk about who they have become as a generation and why we really need to stop treating them like victims. So let me know your thoughts on this little caveat video as we continue this really long competency crisis series that I am having so much fun, and hopefully you are too. Let me know your thoughts, comment, like, subscribe, join the membership, or do nothing at all. I will see you next time.
Let's go.